as I say, I think there are people in the ANC. I think there are people in a lot of the parties that I think we can do business with. But it would have to be on the basis of a shared program of action and shared values and principles.
Could the DA ever rule in coalition with the ANC? That is a question that I posed to John Steenhuisen in a recent episode of my podcast, Solutions with David Ansara. What follows is a short extract from a longer conversation. You can watch the full-length episode by clicking on the link in the description below. Enjoy. So the DA is not the only party that is contemplating a coalition future. The ANC itself might be having to face this new reality, and they're going to be looking around depending on if they fall below 50%, which I think is credible to think that they will. Should we be concerned about the ANC potentially throwing in their lot with the EFF? The EFF's been making noises in support of the ANC in many respects recently.
Look, I think it is a prospect, and I think it's a prospect that should terrify all of us because, that's the exact opposite of what I call the rational centre coalescing. You then have the radical left coalescing. And I think the pathway and end result of that story is already written in places like Venezuela, Zimbabwe, and other places around the world where those policies have been there. I think it'll be disastrous. If I look at just how much the EFF has been able to extract from the ANC, from the opposition benches, dragging them down the rabbit holes of expropriation without compensation, the nationalization of the Reserve Bank prescribed assets, imagine what would they be able to extract if they were in coalition. There is a recognition, and political parties talk and politicians talk. There is a recognition, however, that would amount to a reverse takeover of the ANC by the EFF. And the Ramaphosa faction are very aware of the fact that if that happened, it would be a matter of months before they were purged and were pushed out. So I think that it would be a reverse takeover of the ANC. And I think there are people in the ANC who understand that and would want to prevent that from taking place. So I think it's also important to how far the ANC falls below 50%, because I think the temptation, if they end up with 49%, would be to just keep a co-opted Good or Al Jamar or the PA or one of these other small parties that help prop them up. I think they need to fall significantly below the 46% mark down to the lower 40s, because that's then going to force their hand into making a choice finally about which parties they decide that they would be prepared to work with going forward. But I think the worst case scenario for us is the ANC with a 49% outcome, and they just co-opt one of these small, ne'er-do-well parties to keep themselves in government.
Imagine it's 2024 and you're at the offices of the Electoral Commission, the results are coming in, and Mr. Ramaphosa, assuming he's still at the helm of the party by then, says to, John, I'm a bit worried because the numbers are not on our side. It looks like we're going to have to go into a coalition with the EFF, but alternatively, we could go into a coalition with the DA. How would you respond in that situation?
Well, I think we'd have to respond seriously and in a mature way, and in a way that would put the country first rather than narrow party politics first. As I said to you, I think it would be disastrous for the country if the EFF and the ANC were to find each other, because I think that we would be very much put on the fast-forward slope there. However, there is a caveat. What would that look like, and what would it be, and would it be with the ANC in its current configuration, or would it be with some faction of the ANC? Because I think what you have to do is be very careful as well and not make the same mistake that the MDC did, when essentially what they did was, despite the fact that they did well in the election, they were forced into a compromise with ZANU-PF, and ZANU-PF ended up, just extending their life off the back of the MDC's credibility there. So, to my mind, it would be a very tough bargain that would have to take place for us to do a deal with them, and it would mean the ANC abandoning things like cadre deployment, abandoning many of the members of their own organization who are corrupt, and committing to a program of action that focused on driving the reform agenda. And I think that, as I say, I think there are people in the ANC. I think there are people in a lot of the parties that I think we can do business with. But it would have to be on the basis of a shared program of action and shared values and principles, rather than just the expedience of trying to to get into government. That there would have to be a serious commitment to a reform agenda, and that would have to be reduced to writing. But yeah, I mean, I think that the worst outcome for South Africa, the sort of end game, is EFF ANC. And I think that as rational centrists and people who believe in the rational centre, we should be doing everything we can to prevent that from happening. And that's one of the reasons why we don't want to go into government with the EFF, because we don't want to give them a shred of credibility that this is a party that you can trust in government to be able to do what's right, because our experience shows us that it's quite the opposite.
And how do you think DA voters would respond to that? Because in many respects, DA's, a lot of its identity is based on an anti-ANC platform.
Well, I mean, I don't think that the DA's identity is based on anti-ANC. I think that we've got an alternative program of action and an alternative policy. And I think we've demonstrated where we govern that we have an alternative way of doing things that actually works. And the Western Cape and the City of Cape Town and Midvaal municipality are examples of that. Look, I think it would depend very much on what situation we were facing and how bad things were. I think things are going to get very bad between now and the next election. If I look at today's MTBPS, I'm not seeing a government that has a plan to pull us out of the dive. And I think things are about to get a lot harder for a lot more South Africans. And I think by the time the election rolls around, I think people are going to be looking far more for a way out of the mess and looking for solutions than they are going to be looking to around ideology or finger pointing. And so I think, as I said, it's something the DA is going to have to take very, very seriously on board about, and it's going to be a matter of, well, what is in the best interest of South Africa and the best interest of South Africans? Is it better to just let the radicals take control and the devil take the hindmost, or do you put some chips on the table and some skin in the game and say, well, let's try and fix it? And the voters will eventually have to decide. And I hope that they would err on the side of wanting to save South Africa and do what's right by South Africa. And as I said, I think things are going to be so bad by the time that election rolls around that parties that indulge in just the finger pointing, I think, are going to get punished. People are going to want to see solutions and alternatives.
Yeah, and as in my discussion with Bill Johnson, the prospect of an EFF-ANC coalition would drive the political momentum for secessionist movements, which up until quite recently seemed like quite a remote scenario. But now we have quite a serious Cape independence movement, and the DA itself has also joined this political devolution working group. Not all of the participants of that working group have the same objectives, but they do have a shared interest in seeing more devolution of power, more decentralization, which is a big theme of this show, incidentally. Why did the DA join this group? What are you hoping to get out of it?
So, I mean, if you look at the DA's, and again, go back to our core foundational values and principles and our constitution, subsidiarity and federalism are key tenets of that. We believe in devolving power as far as possible to as local a level as possible, because we believe that it brings better scale, it brings better accountability, more transparency, and it gives people greater control of their lives. And so that's always been a DA policy.
Thanks for watching. Let's hand over to you, our audience. Do you think the DA could go into coalition with the ANC and prevent a coalition with the EFF, or should they remain in opposition? Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this discussion, you might want to check out the full-length interview with John Steenhuisen. That's linked over here. You can also subscribe to my other channel. That's linked over here. My name is David Ansara. Until next time, take care.